All right. Call the Monday, November 14th regular Board of Education meeting to order. Nikki, would you call the roll, please?
Certainly. Nikki Austin, present. Rich Jeffrey.
Present.
Eric Ekdahl.
Present.
Carrie Ellison. Present. Teresa King. Present. Cheryl McGuire. Here. Dylan McGuire.
Here.
Bill Lasberg. Tim Wolf.
Here.
All right. We have a quorum. We are in session. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda for this evening.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion by Terry and a second by Teresa. By voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. And now we get to honor some of our very deserving students. We're excited to have you all here tonight to recognize all these folks. We're going to start off. We'll go alphabetical order for our schools. Ms. Judd, you're up first for Abraham Lincoln Elementary.
Closely. Mr. Niemeyer and I are excited to celebrate Briggs. Briggs is a new student to Abe, but it didn't take him long at all to blend in. He is a confident student and uses that confidence to be productive and helps as a leader to also help his peers also reach their highest potential. So that I appreciate about you, Briggs. Mr. Niemeyer?
Oh yeah. So yeah, we got Briggs to Abe this year. I wish we could have had him at Abe a couple more years. Kind of things really get you, but you know, there's always uncertainty having a new student. You know, and coming in at 5th grade cannot be the easiest thing to do, and you fit right in right away. So I figured I'd share some of the things that your fellow students think about you. I don't know what Mr. Hines is having you do, but I just had to keep you busy for 5 minutes so we could do this while I do. In case you were wondering why you went with him this afternoon. So one of them was Briggs helps me do my homework, and someone just wrote in big letters, "You deserve it." I like how he's always being kind and including everyone. Briggs is a really, really nice friend because he's always kind and nice and doesn't make fun of people, and he is a good friend. And Briggs is the nicest, funniest, and the most amazing kid that I know. So they say it better than I can. But part of the reason I told a couple stories to Miss Judd and some other people about why I really enjoy Briggs. So I've never realized this before, but all the students, when we do math box corrections, have been saying thank you as they leave me. And that's never happened before, not that. So, but I realized you started that because you always say thank you for everything, and you're always so polite. And now all the other kids are doing that. So you are definitely a lead by example, young man. And something else that happened last week was I accidentally put the wrong worksheets on Briggs' desk. They were for another student. Next thing you know, he comes up and brings me this multiplication sheet. You've been done with multiplication for a while. I'm like, where'd you get this? He's like, it was on my desk. I'm like, why'd you do it? It was on my desk. And I'm like, oh, that was for somebody else. You didn't have to do that. I'm sorry. I'm like, does it seem weird that you were doing this? And he's like, yeah, kind of. And the funniest part was, you came up to me later, you're like, I'm really sorry for doing that worksheet. I'm like, no, I'm sorry. That was my fault. You had to do some extra work because of me, and you were the one apologizing. So that just proves how nice you are. You were just an amazing kid, and I'm just really happy that you're in my class.
Good job, Briggs.
Congratulations, Briggs. How are you doing this evening? Pretty good night where we get to celebrate you and some of the cool things you're doing. It's great to hear that you're settling into Abe, and we're really excited to have you there. Thanks for coming to join the family there at Abe. And just listening to what your teachers here have to say about you, it's amazing to hear that when you come into a new situation like that, you can sometimes be overwhelmed and feel a little like you want to pull back a bit. But you've already got at your age the ability to open up and reach out to others and to help them and to really influence the people around you in a positive manner. And I can't thank you from the entire board how much that makes a difference, not only for you but for everybody around you. It makes Abe a really special place. And we're thankful that you're there every day working hard. So we've got a certificate here for you to remember the evening and a gift card from Barnes & Noble. Keep up the great work. Good job. This is
This is Lainey Von. She is a 4th grader at Northside and so incredibly deserving of this award. Every single t-shirt that she's ever had, every single staff member has the same things to say about Lainey. She is smiley, happy, nice to everyone, includes everyone, hard worker all the time. You're going places. You're going places, Lainey. I can't wait to see. Mrs. Steinman is her teacher, and she's really sad that she couldn't be here, but I know she just FaceTimed you, just to let you know how proud she is. But there's some words that she wanted you to hear. Lainey is a role model student, not only in 4th grade, but at Northside School. She comes to school every day prepared to do her best, both academically and socially. She works hard to excel in reading, writing, and in math. Lainey understands that when concepts don't come easy or when things get tough, it takes practice, and she is always willing to put in the work. Always is in bold, which is a huge, great trait. One thing I admire that Lainey is that she's always looking to help others, but more importantly, she looks for ways to include everyone. She truly wants every student to succeed, which is an amazing trait. Lainey sees the positive in every situation and tries to help others see it as that way as well. Here are a few things her classmates had to say about her. Lainey is always kind to everyone in the classroom and even outside at recess. She always helps others. She always tries to make people feel better when they are sad. And this last one says it all. She is the sunshine of the school. And here's what Mrs. Steinman wants to say. Lainey, you are a bright light in my classroom and you are very deserving of this award. I want to thank you for all of your hard work and also for your kindness. It's apparent that you thrive to be the best in these areas. Congratulations on your achievement. May you be proud of the work that you do, the person that you are, and the difference that you make. Thank you so much.
Fantastic work that you're doing there over at Northside. It's just amazing to hear about what a compassionate and caring person you are and how you're always working towards overcoming anything that's really in your way to adapt and overcome and do it with a positive manner that's really infectious, and you're being a great leader and role model for everybody else in your grade and at the school. So we just want to thank you so much for all the great things you do there at Northside. We've got a certificate here for you to remember the evening and a Barnes & Noble gift card. Keep up the great work and congratulations.
I am excited to introduce everyone to Janelle. Janelle is a 3rd grader at Parkside. And Janelle is in Miss Kiddo's class, and Miss Kiddo couldn't be here, but she sent me a message that I'm going to read in just a second. But first, I wanted to talk about Janelle. Each month when we do our nominations, all of the teachers have an opportunity to put in a nomination, and we send out a voting form, and people vote. And often we have multiple students that are really, really deserving, and the numbers are usually pretty close. Janelle's name was on the ballot this month and the numbers weren't close. So as a 3rd grader, when she's rising above and people across the building are recognizing her accomplishments and her, she's always smiling. She's always smiling. She's kind to everyone. She's giving compliments to people in the hallway. She's always asking me, do you like blue or do you like yellow better? Because I'm going to make you something. And she's doing that to everyone. She's telling them that she recognizes things about what they're wearing or how they did their hair, and always giving compliments to make other people feel good and wanting to go out of her way to show people that, that she cares. So we got to pick Janelle up on Friday in the fire truck. And she was waiting outside, so what did Dad tell you? Like, why were you waiting on the porch? Just that there was going to be a surprise? What did he say? How did he say that to you?
He said that to wait, and if someone stops, tell them to honk.
So Janelle was waiting on the porch as as we're coming around the corner, and I'm confident the fire truck wasn't parked yet because I was trying to find a place to park on that busy street. And she was already down the sidewalk and she was screeching, "Oh my gosh!" You knew what was happening at that point, didn't you? She was super excited. Dad came out, Grandma was there, Mom got there, and you almost knocked Mom over. I think you jumped in her arms so quickly. But Janelle, you should be so incredibly proud because we are so proud of you, and I'm so excited that you enjoyed that celebration so much. So this is what Mrs. Kiddo said. Janelle is the epitome of happiness. Each and every day, Janelle comes to school with a smile on her face. Peers can count on her that she's always going to be a supportive and caring friend. She's creative and artistic. During recess, I didn't know this one, Janelle organized Polka Club? I guess I'm doing recess duty at the wrong time. I gotta come to Polka Club, huh? And she's gotten her friends to join and participate. She's always making beautiful art projects and sharing them with others. She's organized, helps classmates and teachers in any way that she can. Janelle is such a joy. We are so lucky to have her at Parkside. You are beyond deserving of this honor. Keep being wonderful. Congratulations.
How was that ride in the fire truck?
It was really fun.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How far do you get to ride around town? How far do you get to go?
All the way to school.
All the way to school?
And then when you get close to school, it turns on the lights, right?
Yeah.
Oh, everybody knows you're going. That's great. So, yeah, just so wonderful, all the great things that you do at school. You're a caring, kind, and compassionate friend, and looking out for everybody around you, and just making sure that there's room for everyone in school, in your circle, and amongst your friends. And we really just want to tell you how much we're proud of you, and that we really, really appreciate everything that you're doing at Parkside every day to make it a very special place. So tonight we've got a certificate to remember the evening, and we've got a gift card to Barnes & Noble for you to get some cool books. Congratulations. Keep up the good work. Hi, everybody.
So this is Liam Soroka. He's our award winner this month. Ms. McGuire and I are excited to present the award to him. So Liam, he actually invited me last week into his class to hear a presentation. Unfortunately, if you know anything about the middle school last week, it was super crazy busy, so I didn't get to. But he did share his presentation with me. I've never been invited by a kid into a classroom before. Usually I pop in and it's like, oh. So, but the fact that you are so confident in your academic skills and your ability to speak in front of others, and not be nervous about that, because that's a hard thing, I actually don't like it very much, it says the world about you. His grades are wonderful. He's got straight A's. He's taking algebra and geometry at the same time. I don't think we've had that before at our school. So the things we've seen and how much you've grown has been astonishing. Ms. McGuire?
So I actually want to talk a little bit more about the public speaking piece. I wanted this to be perfect, so tried to find a quote to go with this. Leadership is not a position or title, but your actions. And that is Liam. So last year was the first time I got to meet Liam. We were starting off our student council, our first meeting, coming back out of all the things after COVID. And Liam, as a 7th grader, got up like, yeah, I want to run for an office, and this is something I want to do. Speaking in front of a group is challenging, and our first speech and our first goal at the start of the year didn't go as planned, but that didn't stop you. So Liam volunteered for everything that we did last year as a council, and sometimes it's really easy to think of like, oh, you get to go to a cool conference or the Bucks game or do those things. But it's also like showing up at 6 a.m. on a Saturday to help out with the fundraiser delivery or giving up your weekends to do things too. And Liam's there right away in the morning on school days to make posters to help share stuff for events. So really putting in the time and making connections and making friends with 6th graders and 8th graders last year throughout the year has shaped you into the leader you are today. And what's been really cool to see with Liam this year is that he ran again. And after everything last year and kind of the struggles of getting up in front of peers, got up in front of everybody in the library and crushed this amazing speech, and is one of our officers this year. But even without the position last year, your leadership and what you do both in the classroom and out is just phenomenal, and your peers pick up on that too. So a lot of times in science class, we'll hear people, oh, I want to be table parties with Liam. When are we getting new seats so I can sit by Liam? You just bring out the best in everybody around you in doing those things. And Liam has still continued to volunteer. So this Thursday, we're hosting or helping out at a conference for our student councils all over southern Wisconsin. So there's going to be about 300 students there total, and Liam has volunteered to help present and lead things for other schools too. So just seeing you kind of come out of your shell a little bit and share all of that awesome knowledge and wisdom and your growth the last year has been really cool to see. So your grit and your perseverance and your positive attitude is why you're deserving of this award this month.
Liam, it's great to hear how hard you're working to make yourself better and to persevere through anything or any trials or tribulations that may stand in front of you. It's amazing to hear when students, especially our younger students, they may try something and it may not go quite the way that they expected it to go, but they get right back up and they take another swing at it. And that's really to be applauded. That perseverance that you have is just amazing. And the way that you're going about it, the things that you're trying to make better or get better at have an impact to the entire school. Your volunteerism and everything that you're doing there is going to leave the middle school a better place than you found it, which is something that I think everybody should aspire to. So to remember the evening, we've got a certificate for you and a gift card to Barnes & Noble to get some books. Great work. Keep it up, and congratulations.
All right, the Monroe High School Student of the Month this month is Jared Botts, senior at Monroe High School. Not only is he one of the nicest young men you'll ever meet, Jared just doesn't go through high school. He's taking full advantage of everything that is offered there and opportunities, and I'll let Ms. Carper speak to that as she nominated him for many of those opportunities.
I am just so impressed with Monroe High School senior Jared Botts. As Mr. Jackson mentioned, not only is he taking a very full, very hard list of classes, he's taking AP Calculus, AP Physics, Advanced Writing. The list just goes on and on. So he's not slacking off in his senior year at all. He's also working at Stoughton Trailers in Brodhead as an engineering youth apprentice. He also was the top runner on the cross-country team that just went to state. So he's doing all these things. The reason I nominated him is because every time I see him, he's got a smile on his face, and he's doing all these great things at Stoughton Trailers. So as part of his youth apprenticeship, he has to write a journal every 2 weeks about what he's learning, what he's doing. And let me just get this right, because some of this is technical and I don't understand it all. But so when he talks about his experiences, so they tasked him, so he's an engineering apprentice, they tasked him to design a cart to roll aluminum sheets to a robot that drills holes into them. So he created drawings of this cart and figured out the cost for each piece of that cart so they could figure out how much it would cost. And then he did a time study analysis so that the welding robots could be used as much as possible so that production is increased. And he is very much appreciated at his workplace. His supervisor and mentor was very disappointed he couldn't be here tonight. His name is Mike Kinsley, but he did send his congratulations and this note. Okay, so this is from the manufacturing engineer at Stoughton Trailers, Jared's boss and his mentor. He says, Jared has been an excellent addition to our engineering team at Stoughton Trailers. He comes each day with a positive attitude and is ready to learn. He is willing to help with all the tasks presented to him and has been improving his knowledge of 3D modeling using SolidWorks. He is also learning and assisting with programming PLCs, which I don't know what they are, programmable logic controllers. Sounds very impressive. Jared also designed and contracted the work for building a cart to hold raw material. Jared's completed projects at Stoughton Trailers emulate Jared's knowledge, growth as an engineer, his ability to work as part of a team, and his responsibility and perseverance to successfully complete engineering tasks. As Jared continues his education, I am confident that whatever career or engineering path he chooses to do, he will be successful, knowledgeable, committed, and diligent to his assignment. Jared has an exciting future ahead of him, and any company he chooses to work for is extremely lucky to have him. I couldn't say it any better than that. We are so proud of Jared.
Congratulations, Jared. And thanks for continuing to reach for something that's a little harder to do. Sorry. Continuing to reach out and grasp for excellence in just about everything that you're doing, from what it sounds like. It's unique that somebody your number of years, younger than me, is so driven and just wants to do more and do better. And we really want to celebrate that. We also want to say thank you so much for representing yourself and the school district of Monroe with distinction when you're out in the community and you're working at student trailers. It's really important that we know that you know how much we appreciate that and what a big difference that's making, not just for you, but for all the other students that are going to go through these programs. So thank you so very much for working hard and continuing to excel in just about everything you're doing. We've got a certificate for you to remember the evening, a gift card from Barnes & Noble. Congratulations. Keep up the good work.
All right, so it's my pleasure to introduce the Staff Excellence Award winner this month, who is Kara Carper. I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, I think that presentation emulates exactly why that she's up here. I don't know about you all, but when I went through high school, Jared, I wasn't really doing that stuff. So, I mean, maybe I could have, but that's the kind of things that Kara does. We have the fortunate opportunity to have her for a little over a year now, I think. Not quite a year. But was able, and thank you to the board too for allowing us to get someone like Kara, because that's exactly what we want to do, is provide more opportunities for our students that are relevant and useful, and partner with the community and do things like Jared is doing. And that's happened, and that has grown exponentially, and that's because of your hard work and partnerships you have with the community. And you had, when I asked for staff excellence nominees for the high school, there were several that nominated Kara, because not only is she doing that work, right, that's why she's here and that's your passion, but they also mentioned that you're willing to help any of the teachers with anything that they need. And then you put a little spin on it of how they can get partnerships with the community or business or workplaces or organizations, which I appreciate. And I've said to these guys a few different times, the one thing that you told me when I hired you was that the only issue I might have is slowing you down, right? That's true. And she has so many good ideas. Sometimes they freak me out a little bit about going too fast, and she pushes me a little bit, but that's good. I need to be pushed on some of these things, because what Kara is doing with the SOAR program and the youth apprenticeships and work experiences and internships, and now the launch program, is absolutely the right thing to be doing as a district. It's been said time and time again with the business partners that we have, and it's really great to have Kara at the high school and in our districts. Thank you, Karen. Congratulations.
Karen, we often say that our students come with an aptitude and desire, and it's on us to provide the opportunities for those kids to do amazing things for their own futures. And, I can't be happier with the decision that we made to bring you on board to create those opportunities. You are making a lasting difference in their lives, and will have an impact for generations in this community. We should really be proud of the work that you're doing here. We can't thank you enough for doing it. I'm going to hand this over to you with heartfelt thanks from the Board of Education, and the floor is yours if you'd like to make some comments.
I will make some comments. I'm very excited I got to do this. So, this award has my name on it, but really, there's a lot of people that get the credit, and the people who probably get the most credit are sitting right here. You took a big risk when you decided to make this position for anybody to be in it. So when you took that risk, I knew that that was a risk, and so I take that on personally, that I need to do good by you, and do right by you. So really, this should have all of your names on this, because this is because of you taking that risk. I just really appreciate your support of the SOAR program and all that we're trying to do with it. And then, you know, I'm kind of the luckiest person in the world, because talk about right place, right time. You know, launch started happening, and then I got hired, and so I got to be part of that too. So it's just been, you know, pinch me sort of opportunity. I also want to thank all the staff at the high school. They really welcomed me. Everybody has just been so good to me, and because I've never worked in a school before, and I don't really. There's so many acronyms, and there's a lot of things I do, like how do you go through the lunch line, things like that I don't really know. So I appreciate all the staff helping me out at the high school. I appreciate administration for, again, their encouragement for reeling me back in when I need to be reeled back in, for not immediately saying no to my crazy ideas. I appreciate that. I really appreciate all the businesses. I make lots of cold calls of, hey, can you take one of my students? And pretty much businesses have been saying yes, which has been delightful. So, you know, to be able to place students like Jared, who really wants to do engineering, and it's like, yeah, we got to find him something. And so we've been really just so pleased with the businesses that have stepped up to provide great experiences for our students. Also, local organizations. So if I'm like, I don't know who to call, I know that I've got partners all across the community. Chamber of Commerce, Green Pine Development Corporation, Blackhawk Technical College, United Way. There's just many Optimists in Kiwanis, and I stop in and see these folks, and they have ideas for us too. So I appreciate it's really a community effort, and again, the appreciation goes to all of you and to the whole community, because this isn't really for me, it's for all of you, because it's a great position and it's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all our recipients this evening. If we could get all of our Lambert Learning winners and our Staff Excellence Award winner to come on up for a photo, we'll get a picture, and then you guys are all free to leave, unless you want to stick around for a board meeting. But thanks so much for everybody coming and joining us this evening.
Center up, Jared, you're the tallest.
Yes, you have to get a picture.
And see there's some parents taking pictures yet too.
Good job. Congrats, guys. Good job.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Good.
No, you guys can go.
It's really okay.
Yeah,
I mean, I stay, so bring us a
Rick, you want to sit through a whole school board meeting?
I think you should experience it. We'll stay for a little bit.
You can leave whenever you want.
You can leave whenever you want.
We cannot.
Thanks for coming.
I'm going. Very important minutes to ask Jenna.
It was
in the corner, nobody can see me. I get work done.
Have a good night, guys.
Thank you. Yep, see you.
Alright. We move on to consent items in the consent agenda. A board member wish to remove an individual's consent agenda item for consideration. Hearing none, we'll read them into the record. We're approving the minutes for the Board of Education October 24, 2022 meeting. Approval of support staff hiring, Haley Holtz, library specialist at Monroe Public Library. Approval of professional staff resignation, Katie Landmark, middle school 8th grade ELA. Approval of administration staff retirement, Brian Bain, middle school principal after 9 years with us. Approval acceptance of community donations, Blackhawk Technical College, 8 sheets of HRS mild steel for the MHS Tech Department. And Jan Abelman knitted stocking caps and mittens to all district schools. So, of course, we want to make note that, Brian's going to be retiring. It's a bummer, but we know that he's going to go have some fun in retirement, I'm sure.
So this is the thing, so he had a day off today, probably because he didn't want to have to come to the meeting and hear all this, but.
Okay.
But this is something that we're definitely going to celebrate more with him as we get closer to the end of his tenure.
Excellent. Very good. Okay. Entertain a motion if somebody would like to make it.
Second.
Got a motion by Nikki and a second by Terry. By voice vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Anybody here this evening for the purpose of making public comment? Briggs, would you like to say something?
So Briggs, who told you to stay for the meeting?
My mom.
You are in for a treat.
Could be running this place, Briggs.
Get your board number right there.
There you go.
That's great.
We're on to old business. So we're discussing our Neola policy consent updates. This is our second reading. We had the first reading at the last full board meeting. So are there any policies listed amongst this large list of policies, 32 in total, that anybody would like to have further discussion on before we approve them?
So just as a reminder, so the ones that we had brought through consent, those were language changes based on litigation and legislation. So those were not policies that we had a choice. So those are policies that were updated per Neola legal.
Thanks, Vito. I would entertain a motion if somebody would like to make it.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Eric and a second by Terry to approve the 32 Neola policy consent updates. Any discussion before we vote? By voice vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We're on a new business. Item A is a discussion of Neola policy updates. This is a first reading of policies that came through committee this evening. So this is not for action, but for questions and discussion.
So we did take these through policy committee twice, so there was a first and second reading in policy committee. And the reason that we did that with these policies in specific is because there were different choices that had to be made. So we had to go through and make sure that our current practices and curriculum aligned with choices that we were selecting within the policy. So that was confirmed tonight, and therefore they're in front of the board right now. We did discuss these over the period of the policy committee previous to this board meeting. So as Rich said, if there's questions on the policy, then we can take a look at them.
Not hearing any questions, so those will come forward to the next full board meeting for approval. If you have any questions between now and then, you can direct me to Fig. We're on to item B. So this is a discussion and potential approval of in-house teacher substitute pay. So we're discussing raising the rate for substitutes when they are district employees filling a need within our buildings. So I'm going to turn it over to Ron and Fig to kind of walk us through what's being proposed.
And I'm going to turn this over to Ron because he did all the math.
Yeah, so basically we upped our rate at the start of the year for out-of-district subs who come in to $103 per day to be competitive with other districts. This year, we had some issues last year with not being able to fill all of our subs, and that's continued this year, right? So we have more and more of our teachers who are having to give up, their prep time to go fill in and help teach another class for somebody else who's gone. And we hadn't really changed our in-house teacher sub pay. I traced it back to 2015. I think it's been much longer than that. It's been $18 per period for a long time. When we went to the blocks at the middle and high school, we did ads that said, if you're subbing for a class that's more than an hour, you get $25. If it's an hour less, you get the $18. So in looking at the rate we moved our out-of-district subs to, we thought that when we get to 25 and 40 per period for the over-under of an hour made sense. Basically, if you took a 6-period day at our elementaries at 25, that would be 150. Now, the one thing when we cover with in-house subs is we usually don't cover every single period, right? You know, teachers would have a prep or whatever else, supervision that we might not have to cover. Same way with the blocks. 4 blocks would be at $40 would be 160. The reality is we would probably never cover more than 3 blocks in a day when we're covering in-house. But it just seemed like it was the time to change because we haven't changed that rate for a long time. People would tell you they probably would rather have their regular day and their regular schedule and their regular prep period, and we really do appreciate the fact that a lot of our people are being asked to fill in and help cover those periods, and this is just a little way of recognizing some of that. It's not the money, but it's just showing that we're noticing it. We would make this effective as of the start of November, and so that we will get it on the payrolls as we move forward.
So one other thing just to add to this explanation is we are asking staff very often to give up their only planning time they have during the day to substitute for other staff because we cannot staff with outside substitutes. So a lot of times that, you use that time for planning, use that to mentally regroup, use that time to, you just do a lot of things to complete your day, plan your day, make sure your day is gonna go well. And we have some staff that, in some cases, because of the schedule, they're having to sub sometimes 4 or 5 days a week, depending on what's been going on. So we can't make up for the time they're losing for planning. And granted, the amount that we're increasing this is not so significant that they're gonna be able to retire early. But I think it is a really good way to show appreciation for the extra efforts that they're doing to cover classes for their peers that we don't have anybody to cover for, so which ultimately helps our kids. So in-house substitute is going to be more impactful generally than an out-of-house substitute because the kids already know them. So again, it should raise the level of opportunity for the kids to learn when they have a sub. So. And Ron did mention that we would be looking at making this retroactive to the start of this month. So we'd go back and reconcile the sub positions that were taken by staff for the beginning of November.
The estimated financial impact for the year is around 8,000, I think.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have to see how many we end up using, maybe based upon the usage we had last year, which was, extraordinary when you compare it to pre-COVID, right? But it's the world we're kind of living in with the teacher shortages, and so I would say that's probably a pretty fair estimate. It could go up if we continue to struggle to get, regular subs in. We hope and would like to get regular subs in so our people don't have to do this stuff.
Mountain is the only place, I was trying to look like, where the classes are more than an hour at the high school?
Predominantly at high school. There are some at the middle school where they have combined time. So, yeah. They have both long and shorts at the middle school, so it just depends which one they're covering.
All right. Additional questions or discussion for administration on this one? If not, I'd entertain a motion if somebody would like to make it. There's a sample in there.
I'm just going to say thanks to all the teachers who do that, because that's huge. It's a huge benefit to us, and I know it's a time commitment on their part, and it takes up their planning time. So I just really appreciate teachers willing to do that in their day.
Absolutely. Second. So I heard that was Phil with the motion and Tim with the second. The motion is to raise the in-house teacher substitute rate for non-administrative professional staff to $25 per class period when a class is 1 hour or less, and $40 per class period when a class is 1 hour in length, as recommended by Ron Olson, business administrator, and Rodney Figueroa, district administrator. Additional questions or discussion? By voice vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We're on to item C. This is informational with potential action. This is a proposal from Clockworks Incorporated, and an opportunity to save a little money on electricity and split those savings with the district.
So Ron, Rich Zentner and I met with a gentleman from Clockworks, and what that company does is they look at your electrical usage. They look at the different buildings you have, and they look and see if there's areas where they feel that they can help you improve your efficiency without replacing appliances. So we have one building that, when he looked at the bills, he said that he could save us, have some substantial savings over 2 years. And I know you're not going to believe this, but it's the high school.
We're not
So,
efficient.
Yeah, I'm so sorry for you to have to hear that here, Jeremy. So anyway, he looked at the bills, and he did a little field trip with Rich, and he went and looked at our inputs, outputs, how we have it programmed, and basically just to give a really quick view of what they do. So they look at when the high demand for electricity is, and when we're making our demand for electricity, because you get charged a certain rate. If you call for electricity during a high demand rate, your rate is higher. If you're off, if you call for that demand before the high rate goes in, you get it at a lower rate. So we're still using the same amount of energy, but we're calling for it at different times. So what they'll do is they put a program on there, and then it looks for when our high demand is, and if we can offset it by 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and the savings. So when he went through and he did an audit, he's estimating savings. Let's see, estimated savings, a 2-year projection for energy bills estimates the school will be billed about $380,000 for electrical use. Of the $380,000, demand charge will average 42% of the monthly bill, so $159,600. So a conservative estimate is that Clockwork software is installed. One might expect as much as $2,375 to $3,968 in total gross savings each month in our electric bill. So $57,000 to $95,000. So it's a 2-year agreement, and what would happen is they would put it on. We would have obviously our previous bills, so we know what our bills were. We'd see what the demand was, and then we would the agreement is for 2 years that we would split the savings with them. So it's a 50-50 split. They would do it, monitor it, and help us get things set where they have to be, or they would actually set them automatically. If we do not experience savings, they do not get a payout. So there are many districts that have looked at this, and it has been good. So what this would look like if it was on is, if we have $160,000 less in electrical charges, we would be writing an invoice for half of that if that's what the savings is. But we'd have a savings of $80,000. So, is that confusing? Did I say that confusing, or does that make sense?
So how are they calculating savings?
So based on what our bills are and compared to what they were previously. So they're gonna set the programs up, so when we pull the electricity or we put our demand in, they're gonna move it around when the high demand rate is on, so we're gonna get it at the lower demand rate. So by monitoring that, and then as that graph changes, the program adapts, and then it changes when we make our call. So it could be, most likely it'll be before high demand rates, but occasionally, depending on what it is, it could be after high demand rates. Kind of thing. It runs 24/7. Be a good investment really for any business with a high electrical demand. So this is one of these things where I want the board to be informed. I do not see a downside to this. After 2 years, if you want to continue, then they will continue the program. and they continually update it, but it'll be, you know, I think he said it comes out to like a 30-70 split. So they would take 30% and then we would recruit 70% of the students after 2 years. I don't anticipate, I mean, we might have to do that for a year, but I'm anticipating if we build a new high school, we're not gonna be able to probably use this because we'll be highly efficient at that time. So the board has a choice. You don't have to take action on it, and I can just do it with my authority as superintendent, or if the board would like, you can make a motion and approve it, and I can take action on it.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments? Discussion?
Have you talked to anybody that's used them before? Have you called any references?
So I had looked at them in my previous district, and they went through and they looked at our stuff, and they could not help us because the gentleman that I had working in my head of maintenance was an HVAC guy, and we'd been slowly upgrading all of our fixtures, and you know, so we already had gone to high efficiency LED lighting. We'd already gone to timing for our gas and our electric, everything, so that we were already pulling at the low rate numbers. So at the time when he looked at us, he couldn't do it. He did provide other. Ron, do you remember if he told us some of the other schools that he's done around here? Do you recall? Because I can't recall.
They're at the top of, I believe, page 4. So there's a very, you know, from large to small districts there. There's obviously West Salem and Reedsville who are fairly large districts. West Appears a larger district down to smaller districts like Random Lake would be a little smaller. But most of those are pretty fair sized districts. The Pierre, Hortonville, those are all pretty fair sized districts.
Yeah, so there it is. So he's got some on there. So sorry, Eric, I couldn't pull it off the top of my head.
And I know both some of the operating people as well as some of the business administrators in a number of those districts. They're pretty solid districts for the most part.
But we don't know if they've actually used them. We just include them in this brochure. I guess I'm just saying, it somewhat seems too good to be true. Have we at least investigated what could possibly be the downside? Or talk to somebody who's saying their praises?
So I have not. You know, I've met with them previously, and I met with them obviously with Ron and Rich. We certainly can reach out and talk with some people. Like Ron said, he has relationships with those other business directors, and you know, we can see what kind of results they have. We can certainly do that.
Yeah, and I don't know if Rich has reached out or not. I actually ended up having another commitment that day, so I did not actually get a chance to meet with him, but I know Rich and Fig had shared me the information from the meeting, so but I don't know if Rich has had a chance or if he talked to any of these districts.
And this is something like power companies don't do, where you want to know.
Yeah, so they have like, whatever it is, their system or proprietary program is what they run. They attach it right to our electrical meters, and then that makes the determination, you know, when we have our demand call.
Is there any additional discussion or questions for administration? If somebody wants to make a motion, we can entertain that, otherwise.
Yeah, if we want to wait, if we want to wait till, you know, Eric, if you want, we can reach out to those other business directors and we can talk about it. If it's a couple weeks, it's a couple weeks. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, well, I mean, whatever. You say you don't even need a vote, so whatever you want to do.
Well, we're talking about it. I just want to make sure that everybody on the board is on board. So.
Do we want to table it and bring it back after you have a chance to talk to them?
I think they should not move it.
Okay.
I've done this since a good program now with this company. I would run it, my opinion.
Okay. So
It's just informative for us.
is that a motion from Phil?
Well, I don't think we need one.
We
I
don't
think we
need
need a motion.
Okay. Sounds good.
I'll get the information.
All right. Perfect. Okay, on to item D. So we've got an academic update. We're gonna get an update on our professional learning communities and an overview of that.
Yeah, so tonight's academic update, we focused on just a PLC overview in our district goal area of systems of support. So we have two major goal areas. We have our PLC work that you guys have heard a lot about, and then we have focused our attention on building those systems district-wide to make sure we have support in place for all kids at all levels. So tonight we'll just do a brief overview of the review of an audit we recently did across the district. So Joe's going to talk a little bit about that. We've got some visuals in there just to show you guys what it looks like on the academic side and on the behavioral side. And then at the end we have Amy that's just going to share a quick celebration of when you have all those systems in place and those levels of support, you can do some really good things with students and make some really good growth. So she'll share that at the end. So we'll just start with Joe, if you want to provide an update with kind of the review of our audit that we just did.
Sure. So Todd mentioned as part of our district goals, we have two priority areas, right? One is PLC implementation. So that's really focusing on all the good work that you've heard a lot from Todd, you know, talking about all the work with our power standards, our learning targets, our CFAs, which are common formative assessments, Mastery Connect, the data analysis, all the way down to responsive instruction, making sure that we know where every kid's performing, and if they're not where we want them to be, we're providing the instruction they need so they can make the progress in order to reach the targets. So that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is our systems of support. And really the best way to describe that is that as an educational system, we have an obligation to answer a primary question, which is, if kids aren't successful, what are we going to do? How are we going to respond to whatever that need might be? Now the good news is, go back for a second, Todd. Well, I guess it doesn't matter. Either one's fine.
I'm trying to read your
Todd's
mind.
getting excited with the clicker here, people. The good news is we have a lot of good things in place. And what we've done is we conducted an internal audit. We asked the principals to work with their leadership teams at every building, and you all did that, so thank you. Spent a lot of time really digging into what's happening in the buildings, what's working, and then really identified the gaps. So in other words, when we ask the question of what are we going to do for this kid who's struggling, we don't have a great response for that issue. And what we identified was primarily 4 issues, and then the 5th is staffing, which we'll get to. So I quickly want to just touch base on some of these things, and I'd ask that if any of you have questions as I'm explaining this, feel free to interrupt and ask. I want to make sure that you understand. So the first is Tier 1, and now can we go to the triangle tab so I can explain that? Sorry, man. So when we talk about RTI, which is response to intervention, or we talk about it in terms of multi-tiered systems of support, we talk about it in terms of 3 tiers, right? And the first tier is Tier 1, and really that's instruction for all, so universal instruction. So what are we going to do for all kids to make sure that they get what they need in the classroom? So that's listed there, and I'm not going to read all of this to you. Number 1, we don't have time, and number 2, it's probably not necessary right now. But we have Tier 1, what are we going to do for all kids? If kids in Tier 1 are struggling, and despite some of the supports that are happening there, they don't get it, then we move down to Tier 2. All right, and Tier 2 is really where we provide some of those interventions and some extensions to help kids. We work through some supports at that level, and if they're not able to realize success there, then we go into more intensive support and remediation at Tier 3, okay? So if you would go back now, Todd. Thanks, you're doing a great job. So I've got listed there, we've got some things that are in Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. At Tier 1, one of the things we identified through our audit is the consistent application of GRT practices. GRT stands for Guaranteed Recovery Time. So all that really means is that as kids are receiving instruction, our teachers are collecting information, data on the kids and their learning in real time and determining which kids need more help in the class. So in other words, I think one of the mistakes that we made early on with the implementation of RTI, and we started this back in 2005, is that we said we're going to teach, and those kids that don't get it, we'll do some universal screening, and those kids that don't get it, then they're going to go to a group somewhere else. What we quickly realized is that's going to overload the system, right? Because there's a lot of kids that just through the way things progress in the classroom didn't catch it the first time around. So what we need to do is make sure that through our Tier 1 universal practices that all kids have an opportunity to get some secondary support from their teacher, and that's what's happening. So the way it's implemented and the way it looks varies depending on the teacher and the curricular area, but we're making sure that there's always an opportunity for teachers to collect information and then providing additional support for those kids in the classroom. And so we're doing a good job with that, but we know particularly at the elementary level, we've got to make sure that everybody has a common understanding of what that looks like and make sure it's happening on a consistent basis. So that's the first one. The second is the assessment of prerequisite skills. And so this is something that's identified within our teaching and assessing cycle. And it's something that as we went through this audit, we realized that as a district, we weren't always consistently doing this. Many times we had identified our power standards, our learning targets, our pacing, and we got to it and started working. And without understanding first where our kids are at, it didn't allow us to really make some of those connections that are necessary. So we've realized that we need to create some specific tools in order to make sure that we can very quickly and efficiently understand where kids are at, and if they need some quick remediation to get them caught up and ready to go so they can reach the standard and learning targets, that's what we need to do. It's a little bit of work that needs to happen there, but we feel confident that we can make that happen. Again, another one at Tier 2 is related to the extension of student learning. So we had a great example of a student, Jared was in here, pretty amazing young man doing some good work. And what we've identified is that we have a responsibility to serve not just those kids who are getting it in the classroom, not just those kids that are falling a little bit behind in the work, but also those kids that get it pretty quickly, and how do we help them continue to grow despite the fact that they're on top of it, right? So we've known that that's been an area of weakness for us, and that's something that we want to address moving forward. And then Tier 3, that last level, update of the problem-solving team process. We've had a lot of good problem-solving teams in place for a long time, but we think we need to update the process to recognize some of the interventions that are currently in place and make sure that everyone has a common understanding of not only the supports and interventions that are available, but also who's responsible for providing those interventions. So those were the 4 primary takeaways. I should have probably said that the way in which we identified those is as we went through the audit and we looked at all the schools, if 3 or more schools identified this as an area of need, that became a district emphasis, which means Todd and I are now responsible for making sure that we're addressing those things, and we're already working on many of those, and we'll continue to do so throughout the school year. And we feel confident that by working with the principals and the leadership teams that we're going to be able to take care of those things. We'll pause right there before I get to staffing. Any questions? Because I recognize I'm talking fast, but we only have 10 minutes. No? Okay. Let's talk about staffing. So one of the things that we wanted to do is identify not only what we need to do, but what we need to be able to execute it. And what we found is that we have about four positions that we really need to consider going forward. So this is just really giving you a first look at something that we're going to come back to at the board. We're not asking you to approve anything at this point. We're just giving you a sense of, through this work we've identified that we believe we need to have an ELA and math interventionist at every school in order to effectively do this. We use them for 2 reasons. One is so they can help provide some direct intervention for kids that get to Tier 3 that are really struggling and need to get that remediation right away. The second part is we need them to be able to coach up all of our instructional staff to provide good, sound instructional practices for those kids that are struggling. And through that work, we believe that we can significantly improve not only achievement, but the growth scores for those kids. So those are listed there. In addition, Todd has done an outstanding job with our ELL program. He recently brought in Robin Rivas from CISA 1 to conduct an ELL audit. One of the things that she recommended strongly is that we consider another ELL teacher at the middle school, high school level, so that one position would help work with those 2 levels. We know that our EL population in our district is going up significantly, and we have an obligation to serve all kids, including our English learners. And so this position would also be something that we would look to hopefully have in place moving forward. You'll see the note at the bottom. It's important for us to note that we recognize that it's not a blank checkbook. I think Ron appreciates this one. The way in which we would fund these positions is by reallocating some of the the funding that we currently use for other positions. So taking a look at things like our current FTEs and staffing levels, looking at enrollment, looking at our offerings, looking at what we're doing. We had Kara here earlier, and everybody was celebrating the fact that we took a chance and we brought Kara in. The way in which we did that is through this exact process. I had an occupational therapy position that I was able to eliminate due to numbers and through attrition, and that allowed us to bring Kara in and hire her to make her a part of the team. So we're quite confident that through attrition, through some smart analysis, we can find the funding for these positions and move forward and be able to provide the support that's necessary for all of our kids. I'll take a breath and I'll ask you guys what questions you have.
How does that match achievement data? So if you're saying this is what we want to do, how is that matched with achievement data at the different buildings, and how do we reconcile that?
Sure, so I think one good example of that would be at the high school and looking at our growth data and our achievement data. And one of the things that we recognize through this audit is that, and we didn't bring that because it's a fairly complex document, but one of the things you would see at Tier 3 for the high school is it's mostly red, indicating that we don't have most of those practices in place. So one of the reasons through the analysis that we're not seeing some of the growth that we would like at the high school level, particularly with our target group, is that we don't have the supports and the positions and the resources and the programs in place in order to effectively serve those kids. And so we know that in order to help remediate some of those skill deficits, we need to have that programming in place. So right now I can tell you, I'll ask Jeremy, who do you have in place at the high school to work with kids if they're still struggling with reading?
The regular teachers, that's who we have. And they do it all right now. They do Tier 1, they do Tier 2 through Flex, and then if there is a Tier 3, it's usually going back to Tier 2 and trying harder and trying longer. So we just don't have that system in place, and to be honest with you, not a lot of high schools do, so I applaud the work that we're doing, because trying to put this in place at the secondary level is a different thing and a new thing, and something that looks like it's been long overdue as we analyze the data.
Yeah, so Teresa, it's a good question. When we looked at this, we looked at our achievement data, we looked at our school report card data, because if we were to share this document, the way it's broken down is looking specifically at some of the categories within the school report card to align specific resources to those areas of need. And the board's going to see some of that, I believe, at the next meeting, if I'm correct. We've got some additional plans that we hope to share with you all regarding this work, but it's absolutely related to the achievement, it's related to school report card data, because we are very focused on making improvements in those areas. Great question, thanks Teresa.
And at the middle school, when you're identifying these interventions, is it like by class, or how do you view that student kind of overall?
Sure. So
besides the attendance and some of the others.
So specifically at the middle school?
Yeah.
So I'll start and then Matt, you can chime in here. One thing I will say, the work that's so important about our PLC framework is that it's by standard, by student. So in the past, we used to work in kind of generalities. We'd give universal screeners, we know X percentage of kids were making it, X percentage of kids weren't there, and then we would put some kids into a group for kids that were struggling in math or reading. And now what we're really getting down to is these flexible fluid groups that are identifying more precisely what are the learning targets and standards that kids are struggling with, and then trying to provide flexible support so that kid doesn't necessarily have to be in that group for the rest of the trimester or even rest of the year. It really comes down to what do they need to know. They might need to be in there 2 weeks. Okay, you've got it, boom, fig, out you go, back to your regular schedule. So do you want to talk a little bit about some of the work that you guys do with?
Yeah, so this is our first year with an ELA interventionist. We had math last year for the first time, so they've been collaborating a lot on the best way to pull kids based on forward, fast bridge, and classroom data. And currently they're pulling by trimester, but kids can, like you said, graduate out of there. So it's an ongoing process. Brian and I and our school psych meet with those interventionists every week on Friday to look at data.
So there's a lot of data analysis that's being done, and it is, again, by student, because we feel we have a responsibility to know where each and every student is performing. And again, going back to what we were just saying, we need to have an answer for each kid. If they're not making it, what is it that they need, whether it be on the academic side or the social, emotional, behavioral side. Did that answer your question, Tim? Or? So,
Amy's example may even provide a little bit more detail of the work that's done in the buildings to do.
You were asking about the middle school. Is there anything else about the middle? Because I want to answer this question and I want to make sure you feel good about it.
Yeah, I'm trying to, get to how those are identified, and the data, I guess, of what classifies as, what are some of those interventions, when do they start? So I don't think it's something we have to cover here, but I probably would like to.
Yeah, the one thing I will say is that's the whole purpose of Mastery Connect. We're really using frequent checks to determine when kids are proficient on those learning targets and overall power standards. And when we see that, when we're analyzing that data, and you guys are doing that how frequently right now? It varies a little bit across building, but at the middle school, what's the practice?
At least every 2 weeks. Our interventionists are looking at it every week.
Okay, so they look at that and then they say, all right, little Joey is not making the progress, he's not where he needs to be, we need to respond to that right now so he doesn't fall too behind, and then that's where we use those interventions. What are the interventions? They're directly related to those power standards and the learning targets that they're using. If through time we see that they're still not connecting and there's likely an underlying deficit in foundational skills that is beyond the intervention that's being provided, that's where Tier 3 comes in. And that's what we were talking about has been lacking, particularly, well, at the high school primarily. And that's why we need to get some of these positions in place.
And after that intervention's been done, Tim, then there's another assessment that's given to see and make sure those kids have that skill. And that, I know that's happening at the middle school and the high school specifically, of kids having multiple opportunities to reassess to see do they have that skill after they've been given that short-term intervention. So that's the data they're using.
So that might be a good segue for Amy to talk a little bit about, as one example of the work that's being done. Amy, you want to talk a little bit about some of the progress monitoring that you're doing at Tier 3?
Sure. Okay, so we started this last year, this process of just getting super technical of the foundational skills that we want for our students K through 5. And so we have meetings 3 times a year that's called benchmark meetings. But then we have Tier 3 meetings that are about like halfway through those benchmark times. And so we just had one a couple weeks ago. And they're 30-minute meetings with every grade level, and we go through, sometimes like 10 to 15 upwards. Every single kid, we talk about their trend line, we talk about the goal, you can see how technical it gets. And I have to give credit to Megan Cessna and Jess Lervick, who Jess Lervick's our school psychologist, Megan Cessna's our new interventionist. So we get really granular about what they need to gain every single week, because our goal is to get all students to be reading at grade level. So then we bring the team together, we talk about every single kid, we talk about their trend line, we talk about what their attendance is in that Tier 3 intervention. And then if they're on track, we just simply check the box, we celebrate it. If they're not on track, there's actually a bottom portion where we talk about what we think are those root causes of that, and then we try to remedy and address it, and if we need to do intervention, then we do that. So it's a quick problem-solving process, and just like the checks the accountability piece to making sure that students are on track. And we were really excited with the results from this. This is our first round, so we're hoping that that continues. But it was very encouraging, and this is all about not just like your interventions that are in place, but it's also about what's happening in the core, what's happening during Tier 2, what's happening just when teachers are doing small groups. So it's really a collaborative effort. Interventionists and teachers, we're all at the same table together, working through it. So it's been a great process, and people are really seeing the benefits of it. So it's a big celebration. I hope it continues.
It's good
it
work.
Should.
And Rich, I think this speaks to a question I know I've heard you ask before at least once, like how do we know if we're on track, right? That's been a question that I think I've heard you ask 2, if not 3 times. And it's through looking specifically at individual kids and making sure that they're making the progress they need in order to close that gap. That's the work that's happening. And then by aggregating that over time, it's the expectation that we'll realize the outcomes that we're looking for.
In Amy's particular example, I think it's every 6 weeks, right? Is that what you guys are about? When you do the tier 3 group, is it about every 6 weeks?
With the analysis now.
The analysis, yes, yeah. But they're progress monitored either every week or every other week, it depends. So our tier 3 involves also students that have special needs, so they have IEPs. So it's a combination, that's why, like in this example, when a special education teacher is also providing some of that support. So sometimes it's weekly, sometimes it's bi-weekly, but it's not more than every other week that we're watching that progress. So I wanna say too that the progress monitoring, like, is a fluency, measure that we use, but that doesn't mean that's what the intervention is. So it's not like you go practice like reading faster, you know, it's very targeted on the foundational skills that are necessary to build that.
What is the trend in your slide? You have trend.
Yeah, so that's the trend that the student is on. So the goal for, in this example, is we want a rate of improvement of 1.12 words per week. And then the trend is what the student's doing. So like this first student was at a 3.17. So like, that's a really aggressive, ambitious growth, much higher than you'd expect. So then we take a look at groups sometimes, and if like one group in particular is not making the gains, we talk about what's going on, maybe instructionally or with the intervention overall. And it's just a deeper sort of analysis. That we're making sure that every student is where they need to be.
And this goal varies by student, right, based on their initial baseline of words per minute?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So what's
Yep.
included in this goal, because it's calling out percentages
Sure.
with
Yep.
what looks like would be projected as a linear line over time to get them to proficiency?
Yeah, but
That's
each-
different for every student,
It is
right?
different for every single student. So it's sometimes too, when like the gap is so large, that it's still, like it's ambitious, and the intervention is working, but it looks like we, in order to really close that gap, we maybe need to layer on another intervention.
And then the other piece related to measuring our progress is, that's why Ty's built in the benchmark assessments to get a sense of overall how are we performing with our kids, and I think that's been a positive step.
You said that's every 6 weeks, there's a benchmark reassessment, is that what I heard you say?
Benchmarks by trimester.
Okay. What was the 6 week?
That was the tier 3 work that Amy's just talking about, a little bit different.
Can I ask you, can I back up to the tier 3 interventions at the high school again?
Please.
So you had mentioned that there's a large volume of tier 3 intervention need at our high school right now. So I'm curious, are we an outlier in that regard?
No, I don't know if I can speak to this.
Yeah, please.
I've been reaching out to all of our Badger Conference and then some of our New Rock Valley Conference cohorts, and colleagues of mine, and they're struggling with this too. There's none of those schools that are doing this work yet, so we're all kind of helping and supporting each other of what we do we're seeing more and more need for what they're calling now, they added into the newest report card called a targeted group, which is your lowest 25% of performers, and how they are growing. And that seems to be like where we're all struggling, is how we get those students moving faster to close that gap. And that's, I don't think we're different from a lot of high schools in Wisconsin or around the nation where we don't have a tier 3 support system in place. High schools typically have been, we'll get you through credits, we'll get you through graduation, and not as focused on the skills. So it's changing that whole culture to have the credit equal the skill attainment. And that's what we're working on now, and I think everybody's working towards that too. People are reaching out literally weekly. I have emails and email change. What are you doing to support these students? What are we doing to motivate these students? What are we doing to help them? So I think people are, not just us, are on this train.
I recently attended a CESA 6 training this week with the 612 ELA teachers, and there's roughly 15 districts at this training that are all asking the same question: is how do we build in these levels of support at the high school secondary level, because we have kids, this was specific to reading, but with big gaps and foundational skills that they're lacking that they should have by the time they reach high school. And how do you fill those gaps when they're in 9th grade, 10th grade? So it's not a Monroe problem, it's a bigger problem that a lot of districts are trying to figure out.
seems like to me that some of that has to be done before they get there. I just don't think you can, I mean, you need to continue to do that, but I think that jump between grade school and middle school, to me, is the most critical part. It's where I think you lose some.
And that's one of the things we're working on and struggling with is like, if that gap is so large when they get there, filling in that gap, but also allowing them to experience the other things that we just talked about in high school, right? That make it more relevant and useful. So there's the balance of that, but also knowing that they have to have functional reading, English language arts, and math skills.
So it's encouraging to hear you guys say that you're reaching out to our peers in the Badger Conference. We're not alone, right? But so what I'm hearing you say is that we're all kind of experiencing this at the same time. We're not quite sure how to navigate it. And to Tim's point, my follow-up question was after we're reaching out to our peers is that what's the feedback loop to address the root cause? Have we identified how we're creating this very high need, not creating, but arriving at this very high tier 3 need in the high school? Where do we need to focus? We have immediate needs to focus resources there, but we can't continue to treat the symptoms, right? So have you guys as a team or as a cohort tried to, like, what do you need from us?
So there's some unique things going on right now. Obviously, we worked our way through the pandemic, and that had an impact on learning, which everyone is realizing. But part of that is the reason why the middle school just had some interventionists that were put in place for this very reason. In addition, it comes down to all the things that we've been working towards that we've talked about with the PLC process. This is why we've done the power standards work. This is why we've worked with learning targets, CFAs. It's why we have Mastery Connect in place, so we can identify those kids in real time and provide supports immediately and not wait until it's too late. And so, Todd, go ahead and tell me if you disagree. I know you don't. But we feel very comfortable about this, not only because we feel it's the right work, but we've been working with some consultants who have led some of the top schools, including high schools in the country. Right as the pandemic hit, we were working with our friend, come on, you gotta remember that, Jack Balderman. We literally had lunch with him right before. So he's coming, working with us, consulting with us, and he's known throughout the country as being one of those most successful high school principals in the country. And Jack was working through this very piece with us when everything kind of went sideways on us. And he is confident that if we do this work, we're going to see the results. So I want to make sure that the board understands this isn't us just sitting in the conference room trying to make stuff up. We're doing all the reading we can do related to the research. We're working with consultants. We're identifying the systems and the framework that's going to get us the results that we need, because I can promise you no one is more invested than seeing results for our kids than this group of people right here. We literally spend a ton of time on it every day trying to figure this out. We're confident that once we have these things in place, we're going to get good results, and we know that because other districts have walked this path and realized this success.
I think, Rich, two things I would add for root causes, and two things we're working on. We talked about ELL programming, right? Growing needs in the district, changing demographics. I think we're trying to address how do we better program for not only kids with that have ELL learning needs, but also special ed. And then I would say I work at the elementary. We've done a lot in the last year and a half of making some shifts with programming and providing professional development with our staff, because we need to, like Tim was saying, these kids need to acquire these skills in elementary school, because by the time they get to the late middle school to high school, it's pretty late for us to be having systems in place to make sure they have them. So, I think we're addressing some of these issues, and then obviously our big work district-wide is PLC. That was more than 10 minutes, Vic. Just saying.
It's okay. It's good conversation, and it's good for the board to hear the things that are going on. And Amy, thank you for sharing your stuff too.
All right. Thanks, Lizzie. Questions, conversation? All right. We are on to item E. This is referendum information. So I'm pleased to say that the community decided to support the building of the new high school and the new site and some work at Abe Lincoln. First off, we have to say thank you to the community. It was a large ask. We appreciate their trust in the board and the district to build something truly transformatory for the community and the district as a whole. So the list of folks that we could thank that got us to this point in time, this has been 6 years worth of concerted effort by multiple board members, multiple administrators, multiple community members participating in committee meetings and helping to get the vote out. We can't say thank you enough. So I think we're gonna celebrate that for a little bit and then tell Faith to get to work. So I think we're going to talk a little bit about the next steps here, and anything that board members may want to discuss in regard to the referendum. So I'll give it to Faith.
So we'll break this up into a couple things. So obviously Ron's going to share some financial stuff, but just like an overview a little bit. So the title work and title insurance, that's all in process right now, which those are all things that have to be cleared up with the property to make sure what's available, what's not available, what can be done, what can't be done. And then as far as like the site testing and things like that, we will wait until after our December 12th meeting to go ahead and initiate those things to physically start. I was told last week corn was going to be off the property on Friday. Was not off on Friday, checked it on Sunday, was not off, but they were opening up the field next to it. Checked it this morning when I was tooling around north side. Did you see me, Amy, by the way? I was on my scooter. I'm hard to miss. I'm the big guy in the red scooter. Okay. And they hadn't opened up that field yet either, but so I didn't get a chance to check it before the meeting, but I know that they're taking the corn off now. So like hopefully this week, and then when they do that, we'll get out there, we'll walk it, we'll get some pictures, we'll kind of look where we might want to drop that pin, and we'll start to get all that stuff in place. I have a message out to the city administrator to work on how we're going to petition, because one of the contingencies is that that property gets annexed into the city. So what we have to do for the petition process to bring that into the city, and then some of the other things that have to be done, just regarding the roads, the road study, the impact studies, and so on. So what we're doing right now is it's all kind of the pre-planning. So we know that we have the project, we know we have a probable piece of property, highly probable piece of property. So we're just going to work on that. So the other thing too, Ron and I met with C.G. Schmidt and PRA last week, Thursday, just to talk about next steps and get the order of the planning of how things have to do, because we have not physically designed this building yet. We know what it's going to be and what we want to have on it. So that process is coming. So we have to decide, how we're going to set up those groups, how we're going to do the meetings, get that stuff done, not just for the design, but also to create the bid packages. And we have to work really hard at this, because if we do this, we get as much detail as possible in our bid package, we're going to have a lot less problems during the construction process. So it raises our level of quality during the building project, it holds our contractors to a higher level of standard, and it makes sure that everybody has a clear view of exactly how this is going to go. And then one of the other things before I turn it over to Ron, we are actually creating a list of potential project managers, so owners reps, excuse me, for the district, and we'll need to determine after we get a little further in this process at what level are we going to use that person. So CG, they intend to have, it sounds like about 3 full-time people on site once we get rolling here, right?
Yeah, they use different titles than what I've always been so used to, but yeah, basically, I'm gonna use the ones I know. They'll have like 2 project leads on the project, and then they'll have 2 like engineers underneath it as well, is what they said, once we get going into the whole part of the process. Obviously, as you ramp into foundations and ramp out, that might be change in those time frames, but during the core of the construction, that would be what they would plan. So there is their oversight. There's obviously the oversight of the architects. They come out and do periodic walkthroughs for the project as well, and so then we also have an owner's rep. I mean, that's a lot of people in layers, and they're looking to see the work that's being done, so.
So then, Ron, if you want to just talk a little bit about some of our finance meetings we had with Baird, PMA, and, can't think of the other group. Baird, PMA, and Quarles and Brady? No.
Yeah, well, Quarles, and then we got some of our financials, folks in American Asset Management, who we worked with on the last project, so, basically, a few things, so I don't forget before we get there. The other thing we did talk about with, C.G. Schmidt and PRA was, is there any parts of the AIB work that we can get done and start working on next summer? The lead time on a lot of the HVAC stuff is too far out, and even, we haven't even redesigned the HVAC system at AIB, so most likely that it'll be more like Northside was, where that first summer, maybe we can do some of the bathrooms and some of that initial work, and then the second summer, we'll dive into the HVAC and the lighting and all the other mechanical things that go into the building. But obviously, any of that we can pull forward a year is great, because it's one less thing that we're doing at the same time. We're also trying to build a high school, probably starting that following year. So on the financial side, we've had multiple meetings with Baird on two fronts. So certainly we're looking at the initial band issuance being coming out here at the end of November. So we're gonna have a meeting on Wednesday, and we'll talk about what that band issuance will look like. On 11/28, we'll hopefully have some results back from the underwriters as to what the financing looks like. The intent to get the money on 12/14, so we can start investing it going out long term. When I talk about that, I'll talk about the next steps would then be looking probably into March for the actual issuance of the bonds. They'll time the bonds whenever makes the most sense. If they see a good bond market in January, they might go out in January into the bond market. If they see, they'll basically look at, there's big players who do bonding throughout the year. They always use the Pennsylvania Turnpike, right? They're always putting money into that, right? There's some of those, the city of New York, and there's some of the big people that go into bond markets. You don't want to put our bonds out on the same day some of those are landing, right? So you don't want that competition. So you look for days or weeks when it's a little slower on the bond market, when you can land in there and get some good rates. And so that's what they'll do by having the bond anticipation note. It allows them to have that flexibility. So that'll come later in the spring. Part of that process is determining whether going back for another rating review makes sense. And so if you can get a rating upgrade, we're A+ now. We were BBB back in the day when I got here, because we were in the hole, right, financially. We had a negative fund balance. And so we did get to the point where we got a 3-step upgrade, which is unheard of. But if we can get a 1-step upgrade from where we are now, you can get basically a 0.1 percentage point on your investment, or on your bonds that are out there. When you're talking $88 million over 20 years, that's over $1 million if you can get that upgrade. And so we'll see. There's a cost of the bond rating, but obviously the payback is great. But they really want to look at right now, what they're looking at is a number of other districts who kind of have the same size of districts, kind of the same community demographics, because it's not just about us, it's also about our community, and have some of the same financials and other situations that we have, and see where they're landing. And if it's likely, if we go and put that money into another rating, will we get that upgrade? Because you don't want to spend the money if you're not going to get the upgrade, but the upgrade would have great return if we could get it. And so then, coming back then to this initial bond anticipation note, once we have that money, we're going to have the swap out in March. But the reality is we're going to have the money from December 14th through the end of the project. We'll be spending it on things as we go. But trying to maximize those interest returns on that money. And so we're talking to a couple of firms who do this, specialize in this in the states, and not only for school districts, but also for other municipalities and businesses as well. And where they really look at the public market is because we have constrictions as to what we can invest in. Everything we put our money in as a public entity has to be secured. And so you're talking either CDs or accounts that are either under the $250,000 FDIC limit, or that are collateralized, or US Treasuries. You know, those are some of the biggest players that they can look at in putting out, but there's also some of the municipal pool monies that are collateralized that we can use. And they will then ladder out and build out a return schedule for us. And so what we will do is after our meeting Wednesday, I will confirm with Lisa exactly what date we're getting our money, make sure it's still November 14th. We have a draw schedule from C.G. Schmidt that we can provide both of the entities and say, okay, we did this with Northside when we weren't getting any interest money, now we're gonna seed money. Using those parameters of the money coming on this date, the draw schedule going on these dates, tell us what your projected returns are. And so, because they both approach it a little differently. Some have some fees for some things, some don't have fees for other things, some have just a percentage coming off the top. But you'll really be able to look at the net return at the end and determine which of those two companies that are looking to provide the greatest return. And looking at preliminary numbers from both, they're gonna be pretty close.
These are returns on unused.
Yeah, so we get 88 million in December. We're spending 3 years to build this building. This first year, we're gonna buy the land and we're going to have some foundation work next year, and we may have some work at Abe Lincoln over the summer. But you're basically building proceeds, and then really it's year 2 and year 3 when you really start drawing. So some of that 88 million will actually sit out there for 3 years being invested, right? Some of the 88 million will only sit in there for a couple months, and then it'll be spent on something. And so they will have that laddered out, and we should see some pretty significant returns on a project of this size with that time, with the interest rates where they are now. You know, just a year ago, you wouldn't have seen much of any return. And so that will likely come at the 11/28 board meeting as well, when we come back with the actual bond anticipation of issuance information. So we appreciate your guys' time, because there will be a couple of extra meetings in here as we step through this process.
Do they have an official estimate of what the interest proceeds might be?
I want to see, because the rates are so fluid on a daily basis, I'll hold off giving it to you, but yes, they do have it, and it's pretty significant. You know, and I think we also, you know, that gets into, you know, when you decide, does that help offset some of those increases of construction costs over time? Is it that helps do some of the furnishings and equipment that then allows, you know, what the building or you know, looks like? So those are all things the board gets to decide, right? And you know, I think, you know, this is one of the investment people like, well, sometimes you don't want to tell the builders they have this much money. I think most people tell the builders because we need to know what budget we're working with, right? Yeah, it'll be significant. It'll be millions of dollars probably in proceeds over the life of the 3 years.
So we do have, so Lisa Voisin is coming from Baird on Wednesday, that's our meeting Wednesday. And she will have some numbers, some preliminary numbers to share with you so that she, you know, and.
Well, she'll be talking borrowing though, she won't be talking proceeds.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry, I keep thinking Baird and the investment. So she'll be talking the borrowing stuff, excuse me, so actually those numbers won't be shared.
I'll have the proceeds for you 11/28, no, but, got me, I'm gonna ask me at some point, we can talk about it, but I don't wanna commit to something publicly that until I know what the numbers are gonna be, because every day the rates are changing.
And the interest proceeds, those go directly into Fund 10, or are those held?
No. Proceeds have to go into Fund 49 where they can only be used for.
Only be used for that?
Yes. Okay. Yep. And there's also this whole rebate arbitrage thing where you're not allowed to borrow money to make money, right? So, you know, you'll have people who will be monitoring that. There's a payback period at which you have to hit, which, you know, part of it we won't hit because we're gonna have a 3-year project, and usually like that response, once you pay it out in 2 years. However, as long as you're not making, this is why you have experts, like 0.25% more than what you borrowed, you're okay, but that's why you have professionals who are monitoring that so you don't get a huge unexpected IRS bill at the back end. And at some level, I mean, there's the side of it where it's okay if you have some of that, because that means you're making great returns that the IRS cares, right? But it's, if you don't want to if you don't have to split money with the IRS, you don't want to. However, you don't want to not make money because you don't want to pay part of it to the IRS, right? If that makes sense.
Greg, I just have a question. Do you think Cindy Schmidt will do soil borings this fall yet or spring?
Possibly, so that's one of the things that we're trying to get work on right now. So like with the environmental impact study and the wetlands, it's too late to do that, but we can engage the person will do that testing, we can engage him and we'll do the mapping. And then as soon as he can get in the spring, then he'll get the rest of the testing done so we can stay within our timeline.
But those are contingencies, right?
Correct.
Yeah, usually if it's not froze too deeply, they can still do some of the soil borings, yeah.
Alright. Any other comments or discussion from board members on the referendum update?
Yes, I just kind of want to echo what you said. We had a large group of citizens who were part of a facility study starting in 2018 that have been working on this and studying all kinds of stuff and making recommendations to the board for a long time. And I think, again, I can't express my gratitude enough. We had a huge group of proponents that just worked to make sure that, on behalf of the district, to make sure they got the messaging out and did a fantastic job. And I know worked every day to get the messaging out. So a huge thank you to that group of people who worked tirelessly. I just don't think we can thank them enough. So.
All right. Any other comments? All right, hearing none. We'll move into our informational items. And, okay, boardsmanship. Let Cindy know by the 15th if you plan to attend the WASB convention.
That's tomorrow, just so you know.
That's tomorrow, so let Cindy know tonight before you leave if you're going to the WASB convention. Thank you to the whole district for honoring our veterans last Friday, various ways throughout the buildings. That was very much appreciated. And congratulations to the Monroe and Glare swim team. We got a top 15 finish at state in the PRs for all the swimmers, I believe. So that was fantastic. Our football team is going to state Friday for the first time since 1996. So we're excited to support them in that bid. And then we also have a one-act play competing at state this Saturday as well. So it's great to see. It's a good time in the district right now. A lot of amazing things going on.
Yeah, we want to get all that stuff put on the report card too.
Yeah.
A lot of drum lines going through the halls lately.
That's awesome.
It is kind of fun, really.
All right, anything from administration? Okay. No Board of Education correspondence at this time. Committee reports. Anything from you, Eric?
Nothing from me.
Dylan?
Policy committee met tonight. We brought forward first reading for some policy updates to the committee tonight.
Okay. Terry?
Nothing.
Nikki? Teresa? Tim? Phil? Carol?
Nothing.
All right. Any agenda items for future discussion from board members? We have nothing from the MEA liaison. They reached out earlier. We hear from the press for immediate questions. We are going into closed session. No business after the closed session. We're going into closed session for Wisconsin statute 1928 5 C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation by any public employee over which governmental body has jurisdiction or exercising responsibility to wit personnel issues. Compliant to Wisconsin statute 1928 5 F, considering financial, medical, social, and personal histories or disciplinary data of specific persons for employment consideration of specific personnel problems or the investigation of charges against specific persons, except for paragraph B applies, which, if discussed in public, would likely have substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any persons referred to in such histories of data or involved in such problems or investigations to this personnel issues. I entertain a motion at 8:39.
So moved.
Eric and Terry. Nikki, would you call the roll, please?
Yep. Nikki, yes. Rich?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Terry? Yes. Teresa? Yes. Cheryl? Yes. Dylan?
Yes.
Bill? Tim?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to close.